Welcome to a new episode. In this episode, we'll be seeing forms validation. So when we talk about Angular, we have two types of form. First is the template and second is the reactive. Both has its advantages and disadvantages also. And a specific scenario where you have to implement those. If your forms is pretty simple, having some basic input fields and basic validation, so you always have to go with the template form because you don't need to code extra to build your form and achieve validations also. But in reactive, it is again in the specific scenarios only. If you have complex validation, dynamic forms, dynamic element is going to be used in your form, then only you have to depend on the reactive form. So in this episode, we'll be only focusing on the reactive form, template form validation. Okay, so let's check what things we need to do. So this is the project I'm already using from my previous video session. I will be continuing on the same. So I won't be designing whole forms and everything again. So this is the form which you are seeing it here. This is the only form. Okay. So first thing what we need to do that we have to enclose our form. What are the elements we have inside a form tag? Okay. So if you can see, I have first row, then second row, third row, and fourth row for the button. So I need to include this inside the form tag. Okay. This is the first step. After that, I need to create a hash property value. Let's name it as a user form, and I need to store form value. Ng form is the what you can say name which Angular has for the template. Okay, so all the values including form is valid or not and every elements with what we have all will be stored in this variable if we want its access. Okay, this is the first thing we need to create form tag. Okay, after that we are going to use basic HTML tags what we have like required, min line, max line, pattern to achieve the validation and mix that with the Angular. Okay, so let's consider like required is there, then let's add min length as 5, at least 5 characters should be there. Okay, then for next add min length as 7, again make it as a required. So out of the 5 elements we have, we are just making required first 2. Okay, so remaining are optional. So after this step, what we need to do, we need to add a hash property again to store the ng module value. Okay, so property name is name. This is again user defined what you have to do, and we will be storing ng model value into this. Okay, so like same thing we have done, like we have stored ng form value into this hash property. Same thing we are storing ng model value into this name property. Okay, let's do for the below one also. User name ng model. Okay, next thing what we need to do, we need a div tag where we will be showing our validation. Okay, let's take a span inside that. This is required. Okay, so we need to show and hide based on the condition. So for that we will need star ng if is equal to name dot errors question mark just to save check, then required. Okay, by this we are going to show if we have a required attribute on this element, and if it doesn't have any value, so this div will be visible. Okay, so let me add a class also. Class error, I have created it in my CSS. Let's check this much of code. One click of add. I think we have done something wrong. Let's open a console. Attribute, that's why it is giving us the error. So we need a name attribute. It doesn't, like, it should be present in there. It doesn't require like whatever the name you have to provide, but basically we can use the same name. Okay, so you can see This is required. This label is already visible. Okay, so just to add an extra check. Okay, so just to add a extra check, what we need to do, we need to add a if condition on this top div, like that validation will be only visible if I click on the submit button or I click on that particular text box. Means we have touched that text box. So for that we have touch property. Okay, so let's save. So you can see we don't have the validation now, but if I click on this, validation will be enabled. Means the message also, let's save. If I'm clicking, this is required. If I provide the value, so you can see the second message is shown. So like this you have to add multiple, like if you have the pattern, like pattern is there, even if we have a, what we can say, invalid form, so we can disable that button also by using disable attribute. It should be in the square bracket is equal to, what we need to do, we need to use the form variable, user form dot valid. Let's check. So you can see by default button is disabled unless we provide the actual. We can remove this enable also from here. Okay, I can remove this. So you can see button is still enabled. You can add suppose. Okay, so here you can add if. So even if someone removed that disable attribute from the HTML, still you will have an issue. Okay, so you can see this error. So this is all you can do with the. So I will repeat it what we need to do. First thing, you need to enclose your all elements inside a property and store the ng form, like the template form, into your form variable. Okay, the next thing, what are the rules you need to add? You can use the basic HTML5 validation like this. Then you need to create a hash property and you need to provide a name attribute also. Then the validation box, like the validation div, you need to add additional check touch or the dirty just to show the validation unless I'm touching that text box or element. Okay, after that specific span to show the required or the mean length or the max length or the pattern. Okay, so this is all what you should know about the template form validation. Thank you.